There were some more devastating figures that came out on the economy today. It's not looking very good. And then you have Paul Krugman, who writes in the New York Times about something that he calls the third depression. He says, we now, I fear, are in the early stages of a third depression. It will probably look more like the long depression than the much more severe Great Depression, but the cost to the world economy and, above all, to the millions of lives blighted by the absence of jobs will nonetheless be immense. Now, the solution in Krugman's mind is always spend more, spend more, spend more. So we have called on one of our local economists, David Rose, who is the chair of the economics department at the University of Missouri, St. Louis, to talk about this just a little bit. David, good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you.
All right. Did you hear this Rick Santelli thing yesterday about stop the spending, stop the spending, stop the spending?
No.
Okay, I want to play you a say. This runs a couple of minutes, but I want to get your reaction to something because it all goes to the point of some of the things that we're going to discuss. So for the listeners who haven't heard this was on MSNBC. I just want you to listen to this discussion on CNBC yesterday.
All you guys want to cut taxes en route to bringing down the deficit. That's the current.
No, I didn't say anything about taxes, Steve.
Spending.
Stop spending. Stop spending. Stop spending. Stop spending.
Spending.
Spending. That's what we want.
And cut the capital gains spending. Cut capital gains. Cut capital. Make it 0% and see what happens.
I think it'd be very good. Steve, I think the jackhammers won today, but you can always come back for more.
I just keep saying what the data show, and the data show that the tax cuts don't pay for themselves. By the way, the Obama administration
bit you on the nose.
Look, the Obama administration.
Read some Austrian economists instead of the funny pages.
Look, I'm ready to talk about Fred Hyatt. I'm ready to talk about John Hyatt, whoever you want to talk about.
There's an economist we can all follow.
We're going to cut taxes and that's deficit at the same time.
Go back to Russia where you understand the state and the citizen.
Steve?
Oh, boy.
Oh, Rick, you're gone, but thank you anyway.
Steve, it's not the Leisman's Little Red Book.
Why does he always make it personal? What's that?
It's not the Little Red Book. What's the name of your Leisman rules? That's already taken.
Look, what are you guys talking about? I wish I understood.
The
Hold on a
Leisman
second.
rules. The Leisman stimulus always comes back 10 to 1 for every dollar you spend, and no tax cut has ever helped anything.
All I'm saying is that government has a role in easing the transition in the face of a massive recession. If you wanted the government not to spend, Joe, you know that Hank Paulson, the Republican Treasury Secretary, said the unemployment would have been 25%, okay? That's what people were saying about it.
No way.
You know what? During the Depression, Mr. Leisman, it wasn't the tightening that caused it. It was the fact that they had it easy for too many years. You know, you have to turn around and look at things, from the other side. Spending. You've been married too long.
All right, now there's a lot, David, there's a lot of yelling going on there, so hopefully you could hear that okay. That was Steve Leisman who was taking the case that we should spend more. Steve Wynn was one of the other voices there, Vegas hotel magnate, saying we should cut the capital gains tax. So there's all this stuff going on. You have the consumer spending numbers that came out today, which are down. There's this fear of a double-dip recession. Cull it all down for me. How much of this stuff, when it comes to the third depression that Krugman's talking about, is the possibility? Should we be spending more? Should we be cutting the capital gains tax? We're not going to answer all this here, but what are your thoughts?
Wow, a lot of questions.
I know. Let's start with your reaction to what you just heard in the yelling, the shouting match with Santelli in that game.
Well, I promise not to yell. That's a good start. I think Milton Friedman once said something regarding deficits that I think kind of cuts to the quick on this. And his point was, deficits themselves are not really the issue. The issue is the proportion of the total output of the country that's being dedicated to the government. Because in the end, although government does some things that are useful, and I'm not for zero government or anything like that, the bottom line is the stuff we actually consume, the food, the housing, the cars, and so on. The government doesn't make any of that stuff. So the larger is government relative to the society in general, the fewer human hours will be devoted to making stuff we consume. And so that's just a bad idea. And he saw deficit spending as a means to the end of increasing proportion of government. And in that respect, the stop the spending, which is the guy was yelling because he's frustrated.
Santelli, right.
Right. He's frustrated because he's being pettifogged by people who are trotting out the same old arguments, and that's why he's doing it. But he's really cutting to the quick here. Our problem, as the other guys were trying to frame it, is, we're going merrily along. It's no big deal, and people got real nervous, and consumption spending and investment spending went down. So we're kind of in a recession, and it's just dumb to wallow here. Why not pump prime a little bit and kick it back up? Well, that's right. If that's what the situation was, and there'd be no point in suffering like that, I agree totally. The problem is that's not what happened.
Right, exactly.
And on this, I basically agree with Krugman that we are potentially in the midst of this. As you know, I guess we've been talking almost, at least a year or 2 years for, I don't know, for a long time.
Couple of years now.
Yeah, and I've been saying that I have been worried about a double dip, and I was worried that we would get into a situation maybe where we didn't have a severe crash, but where we just bounced along the bottom and just never could seem to find our legs. I also told you a long time ago that while that was going on, if we wanted to turn it into a depression, we certainly could. That was certainly something that could be done. And I think that we're basically doing what was done in the early 30s to turn what should have been a sharp, nasty, deep recession into a long, protracted depression.
Because we did not let things naturally bottom out?
Exactly. Here, we have to have some context here. I want to rob the people who were taunting the guy who was saying, stop spending, stop spending, stop. I want to rob them of their premises here, if I might.
Please do.
I mean, in the end, I think what people have to understand is whenever the economy does really badly anywhere in the world at any point in time, Krugman talks about the collapse of 1873 and then 2931 and then now. Each one of these has a unique story, and these are not just normal run-of-the-mill ups and downs. And we have a unique story here, and that unique story means that just trotting out the old smoothing argument that these guys are trotting out is not going to work. So here's basically the elements of our story. We have a perfect storm right now, and it has three basic elements. The first element is that we're in the midst of a mania, or we're at the end of a mania. And like all manias, it resulted from some kind of a change. The South Seas mania was a result of the financial instruments based on opening up of trade. People had never been familiar with this sort of thing. The tulip mania was based on a new product that people convinced themselves had some kind of different properties and different kind of market than ever before, so on and so forth. Our mania was the result of changes in real estate lending rules and practices due to changes in government policy. Okay, so the first thing is we have this huge real estate bubble that inflated over a very long period of time, and it affected virtually everybody's balance sheet, including foreign governments and foreign financial institutions. So that's a big part of the story. That's one of the three main elements of our perfect storm. The second element of our perfect storm is that we had a very easy money policy from the Fed going back to the beginning of the 2000s, and what that did is it took a bubble that we were going to have from this change in policy, and it made it bigger than it would otherwise been. Now, I don't think it made it like 10 times bigger than it would otherwise been, but it certainly made it bigger than it would otherwise been. So that was kind of a bad idea. The third thing, and I think this is by far the most important, is we are in the midst of the beginning of the reconciliation of a demographic shift that was going to be problematic no matter how conscientious we were about dealing with it. And that demographic shift is this huge bulge of the population, the baby boomers that are beginning to retire right now. We've been warning about it for years.
But done nothing about it.
We've done worse than nothing about it. Suppose we had done nothing about it.
Wait, can you hold that thought?
Sure.
Hold that thought. I have to check traffic and weather. I want to take you back. Will you take phone calls if people have questions?
Sure, as long as we get through the preamble so the questions aren't...
We'll get through the preamble, I promise.
Okay.
I promise. David Rose is here from UMSL. If you have a couple of questions on the economy, the stimulus spending, the call for more spending, 436-7900, 1-800-925-1120. We'll pick up right where we left off in a moment. First, Paul Crandall.